What's up guys, Jimmy here, and today I want to talk about the future of SF5. This weekend there's going to be the North American Regional Finals, and there's very likely going to be some kind of announcement regarding SF5. Ono hinted very strongly at that, so there's that. I do think this announcement is going to be very disappointing to a lot of people, and I think our expectations should be really low, and here's why. I think it's important to take a look back at how Season 4 played out so far, so we get a better understanding of what's ahead. Because Season 4 is a really weird season so far. We got Kage at first, a character that a lot of people liked, myself included, and recently I got to play Kage quite a bit, and I really enjoyed the character. But let's be clear, this is actually a low-budget character for Capcom. This is literally Ryu's character model with horns. We basically just got horny Ryu, and what's even weirder is his animations, because a lot of people immediately pointed out they closely resemble those of Dan in the past. And on the surface level, it doesn't appear to make a lot of sense, but if you think about it, maybe it does, because Dan might have been a planned character for a certain season that didn't really make it, but they might have already worked on the animations, so they just reused the animations that they weren't going to use anyways, right? SF5 has had a lot of weird things added to it, and like stuff that didn't really make it. I think Season 2 was the weirdest season, back then was the weirdest season, because it didn't make sense to release 5 characters that nobody cares about when Street Fighter 5 was already doing poorly when it comes to public reception, right? You would want to give players their fan favorite characters in order to turn things around, but Capcom apparently didn't even want to do that. Like, they gave up basically. At least from my perspective, this was clearly the case. Capcom was not willing to invest more into the title, so they gave us the bare minimum of what they promised at any given point. And maybe this is because they were planning something bigger for the future. This has always been something that I've been looking forward to. This has always been my hope for SF5, that they're just planning to release like a major upgrade. Not like, I think the gameplay itself isn't that bad, by the way. Like, I'm not trying to trash SF5. I'm just saying that a lot of stuff has been disappointing about Street Fighter 5, and maybe Capcom wanted to give us like a really big update. But recently, with the new interview from Eurogamer with Ono, like, my hopes and dreams about that being true have been completely annihilated, so let's get into that. I'm gonna read a couple of interesting statements from the interview in a second, but before that, let's finish off this why Season 4 is weird statement that I started earlier, because the EVO announcement was really weird, and I actually kind of predicted that, and I definitely need to get into this topic before we talk about the interview, so let's get into that first. So a lot of people had very high hopes for the EVO announcement, and they were disappointed exactly the way that I predicted in my video beforehand, because I said there's no way they're going to release new mechanics in the middle of a CPT season, and just releasing a couple of characters isn't good enough, because then it begs the question, why not just release it the same way like you did in every other year so far? And that really holds true. Why did they release 3 characters at EVO when they could have released 3 characters throughout the season? It made no sense to do it this way, and Capcom is just not communicating. And this is one thing that I really want to be clear about. If a company doesn't communicate what the plan is, then there's probably no plan, or whatever they have in store for you is just so bad that they figure it's better not to say anything. So yeah, this is why I say Season 4 has been really weird so far, because the EVO update didn't make any sense. They could have just released content regularly instead, and people would have been okay with that. But instead, they received this amazing backlash, which makes me believe that the only reason we actually got characters at EVO was because of the backlash. That was not the initial plan. Maybe Capcom wanted to give us a bigger patch at the end of the year, and basically give us nothing for Season 4, just to give us something at the end to be excited about, and they probably backtracked on that idea, but because they saw people were not happy with this, especially because they were not communicating with us. So yeah, I thought maybe there's just something that they can't announce at the moment because of the future because of the PlayStation 5 maybe. Maybe there's something like an Ultimate Edition of Street Fighter 5 on the PlayStation 5. That would make a lot of sense. That would make a lot of people happy. That would be an amazing opportunity to fix some long-standing issues with the game that are not addressed at the moment, like the netcode, for example. But then I read the interview of Eurogamer with Ono, and now I'm not so sure anymore, so let's get into that finally. I'm going to be linking the entire interview down below. Check it out if you're interested. It's pretty interesting to read through the entire thing, but for now I'm going to read through a couple of really interesting parts of that interview. So the interviewer asks, in terms of the big updates that have been teased to be coming later this year, well, none of it's leaked so far. Ono responds to that with, I can't really go into the details, the main thrust will be this additional mode. We're still working out the details in the beta, but it'll certainly be dozens, hundreds of people that can take part in a tournament at the same time. We're fine-tuning that, and that'll be ready in the coming months. So he's talking about this tournament mode that we've known about, that is partially already in the game, by the way. That's going to be a thing in the future. And it's probably going to be a great addition to finally have like a native way to organize a tournament. I'm actually looking forward to that. So the interviewer asked then, is this part of a big refresh for Street Fighter V? And Ono responds, not so much. It's just the addition of this new feature. Maybe when I say big update, you're imagining the old days of Super and Ultra. I think it's a big addition to the game, but as you've seen, the strategy for the title has been gradually adding more features, more characters, and it's gradually gotten bigger over time. This is a very disappointing answer from Ono right there. He's clearly making sure expectations are very low, and that's probably the correct way to handle the situation. If Capcom had something amazing in store for us in Season 5, I don't think Ono would be talking like that right now. Maybe Ono is just really trying to surprise us with something, but the way this entire interview reads, I'm not very hopeful that this is actually the case. I would love to see Ono just trolling right there and making sure, like at the end of the year with Capcom Cup, we're gonna get a big surprise from him. That would be awesome, but this is kind of frustrating to read as a Street Fighter V fan. But what's even more frustrating is this next section right here. It reads, Street Fighter V had a troubled launch. If you were launching a new one now, what would you do differently? Ono responds with, we definitely learned a lot from launch, the main thing being our netcode. We took a lot of heat for the quality of that. It's easy to look back now and say we got through it, but it was a tough period. We had to do a lot of work to improve that and get it to where it is today. So this right here really reads like a company and a person being completely in denial. I'm not sure how Ono can say that the netcode is fine the way it is. Like, that's a ridiculous statement. It's by far the worst problem. It's the biggest problem that Street Fighter V has till this day. It's the thing that makes the game very unenjoyable. And this really doesn't spark a lot of confidence for the future. He does say he's going to make sure future titles are, get this part right. I think what he's referring to is the random disconnects to the server, which happened constantly on launch day, which was a problem, and it was a problem that was fixed eventually, right? So this is probably what he's talking about, but that's not the netcode. That's not really the quality of the matches that we're talking about. This is literally functionality that is missing. The game literally wasn't working, and he's unhappy that this was the case. And he says stuff that should be obvious. If you're going to launch a game with online functionality, make sure it's actually playable. We're not even talking about the quality right here. We're talking about, can people play the game online, right? This is kind of frustrating for me right now. I'm having a really hard time finding the right words to describe how frustrating this is, because there's no acknowledgement at all that the netcode is a problem, that the quality of the matches isn't acceptable, and that something should be done about it in the future. Capcom seems to be happy with the way it is with the quality of the matches. In fact, Ono states later on in the interview that he's unhappy with how much server costs are involved with Street Fighter V. This is something I've personally noticed, by the way. With the NetDuma router, I can see how many how many servers or what servers I'm getting connected to. And there used to be multiple server locations that I used to connect to, like the West Coast USA, East Coast USA, Frankfurt, Germany, and somewhere in Poland as well. There were multiple server locations, and all of them shut down actually. They're not active anymore, besides the ones in the West Coast USA. So Capcom is clearly not using a lot of server space at the moment, and this has been something that I've speculated on in the past, that the server capacity directly influences connection quality, and I do believe this is true till this day. And at some point I really need to find this statement again from Capcom. I'm pretty sure they even admitted to that they didn't have enough server capacity to get the matchmaking to work properly. So they're absolutely on the lower end, and that's because they don't want to pay for Amazon's AWS anymore. They just, like, it's just too costly to have the server running. They're not making, I'm not quite sure actually how much money they're making from SF5 at the moment with all of the DLC, all of the Chun-Li costume sales, but maybe they're actually losing money, or at the very least they're just not making enough money to justify having a lot of servers active and having the matchmaking work properly as a result. So yeah, there's really no point to speculate further than that. I just want to highlight there are good reasons to be pessimistic about Street Fighter V right now and the future, especially if you read the next section in this interview. It says, in terms of the future of Street Fighter, is that something you've got your eyes on? There is a new generation coming next year. How's Street Fighter going to fit into that? Ono responds with, I've seen the Wired's PlayStation 5 article and was looking at it in amazement. I think for something like Street Fighter though, the best thing is not to rush out with something at launch of a next generation console, but let the next generation start, let the install base increase, see the capabilities in the wild, and then take a look at how we approach our game design from the bottom up on that new platform. So yeah, this does not really spark a lot of confidence in the future of Street Fighter V. I think it makes perfect sense for them to release an Ultimate Edition on the PlayStation 5. It would be a great opportunity, especially on release day, to have like this full package of Street Fighter V on the PlayStation 5, and people would be happy with it. I'm sure about that. If you add a couple of, if you fix the core issues, like fix the netcode, add a couple of new mechanics, maybe a couple of characters, and call it a day, people would be like, hey, this is an insane value for a $60 or $70 game, whatever they're gonna ask for it on the PlayStation 5, and people would have a fully functional, massive fighting game right from the start. So to be clear, there is a chance they're actually working on something like that. There's no way Ono would just say that in an interview. There's probably a lot of marketing behind that if they're going to do that. But still, I think like the way the whole interview is phrased, the whole interview, the way it's set up, it doesn't seem like this is the case, unfortunately. I think Ono wouldn't really choose those words. He wouldn't really respond the way he does if that was the case, if they were working on something like that. So this really makes me sad, honestly, because I feel like this might be a really, like a major missed opportunity for Capcom to make a big impact in the fighting game space. And if you think about it, maybe Capcom is just really not that invested into the future anymore, into the future of the fighting game genre, because if you take a look at their other accomplishments with other genres, with other games, with other IPs, like Resident Evil or Devil May Cry, they're so successful. Monster Hunter, obviously, right? They're so successful with that. And if you take a look at Street Fighter or like the fighting game department in comparison, it's just, it doesn't really hold up, right? So from a business perspective, it might actually make a lot of sense for Capcom to just slowly backtrack on this aspect of their IPs. So yeah, with all of that being said, what are my expectations this weekend? We might see a trailer for a new character. Maybe if we're lucky, we're even gonna get the release of that character right away. It's really close to Capcom Cup though, so I kind of doubt it. And at Capcom Cup, we're probably gonna see a little bit more stuff. Maybe another, like one other character. That's something that they usually do, by the way. After Capcom Cup, usually there's one character that they show that basically gets released right away. Either way, I think there's not gonna be a lot more than that. Hopefully there's going to be a balanced patch for Season 5. I think this is something that Capcom won't really get away with if they don't patch the game's balance, because people are really annoyed by Rashid, Karen, Akuma. Those characters really, I think people want to see something differently in the tournament space in Season 5. I think this would be a major issue if they didn't update the balance of the game. And other than that, I think we should really keep our expectations low. I highly doubt there's going to be new mechanics added to the game in Season 5. I just don't think this is going to be the case with all of the stuff that I showed earlier. So yeah guys, let me know in the comments down below, what are your expectations for the upcoming announcements? Any and all thoughts. I always read all of the comments, by the way. If you comment on one of my videos, I will read it. I don't always respond, but I definitely read all of the comments. So let me know what your expectations are for the upcoming announcements. So thank you so much for watching, take care, and I'll see you soon.